Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second shelf. I'm trying something. I'm trying out something new here. I'm not sure how this will work out, but to explain, at the end of each year, I do a tops and flops video, my best and worst reads, and put together 5 or 6 books. And I got a lot of comments this time around that you obviously like that feature, the idea of the top and flop combination. And a lot of people asked me, why don't you do this more regularly? And I'm not sure whether I can do it monthly. I'm trying it out now for January, but maybe it's better as a quarterly feature. You will let me know down in the comments, because if I do it monthly, I will have to exclude the tops and flops from my recent read, regular recent read video on Sunday, because otherwise it's just getting too repetitious. But we'll see how it goes. For now, I'm trying it out for the first month of the year, my top and flop reads in January. And I picked 5 books, 3 in the tops category and 2 in the flops category. And the first one in the tops is the book that I thought about the most. And that's this one, No Violet Bulawayo. We Need New Names, first published in 2013 and shortlisted for the Man Booker in that year or the year 2014. This is a debut novel, No Violet Bulawayo, I have to look at it to get it right, is a Zimbabwean writer who immigrated to the United States, and she writes in English. No Violet is her pen name. Violet is her mother's first name, and No means with in Zimbabwean in her language. And Bulawayo is the town she grew up in. Anyway, that's just a side note. The novel follows a young girl, 10 years old when the novel opens, Darling, and a group of friends of hers in Zimbabwe, just in let's say 2008-ish, so the beginning of the new millennium. And then in the second half of the novel, Darling has moved to the United States to live with her aunt, and the book ends in 2011. And I know that because it ends when Bin Laden was killed, so that was 2011. And Darling at that time is 16, 17, just towards the end of high school. What made me really think in this novel is the way that the author had the capacity to give us a view of a Zimbabwean life through the eyes of children. I thought that was, I normally don't like child protagonists or point of view of children. It mostly doesn't work for me, but in this book it really worked. And what I thought was really well done was the fact that these children, they experience hardship and hunger and violence, and early pregnancy. One of the friends of Darling, she's 11 and she is pregnant. She got raped by her grandfather. But children, they don't question things, as it were. They just experience them. The life is just the way it is. And I thought that was really brilliantly done. It also made me think about things that she the author mentions in a more by the way feature. For instance, that people would always say, oh, you come from Africa, which doesn't make sense because Africa is a continent. And I do that myself. I mean, I would go with a friend to an African restaurant and not think about the fact that there is no such thing. I mean, it wouldn't make sense to, for instance, say I'm going to a European restaurant. No, I'm going to a German restaurant. So these kind of small things that made me perceive my own prejudice and my own preconditions, I thought that were really brilliant. I didn't think the part in the United States was as strong as the Zimbabwean part, and I didn't like the ending of the book, I have to say, but still, it was definitely the book that I thought about most in January. Another thing that I want to do in 2019 is reread more. I only reread, I think, 4 or 5 books in 2018, and I just want to do that more. And so the second top is my best reread. I think I reread 5 or 6 books of the 20 books that I read in January. And this one was my favorite reread, a non-fiction book, quite a short book by Mary Beard, Women and Power, first published in 2017. It's 2 short essays based on 2 speeches that Mary Beard gave in 2013 and 14, I think. Mary Beard, of course, is a very well-known classicist, a British classicist. And what she does here in these 2 essays is she looks at classical myths and stories and how the treatment of women there is still an undercurrent in the treatment of women now, especially women of power. So, for instance, she looks at how Penelope in the Odyssey is silenced, how she's not allowed to speak. And then in the first essay, Mary Beard explores this particular way of getting women, to shut up, and how in modern times we use things that we sort of subconsciously probably have incorporated in our way of looking from the ancient Greek or Roman myths. And in the second essay, she focuses especially on women on power now and how we look at them and how we want them to be more male, quote unquote. So women would, if you go to a leadership conference or whatever, women would be advised, to lower their voices because that's the voice of reason and respect and that we have in our minds, the male voice, which is lower than the female voice. So when I first read it last year or the year before that, I thought it was good, but it didn't really grab me. But since then I read a lot more about these, ancient tropes and about women in power, and it sort of spoke to me more. So now I can really highly recommend this book if you are interested in a classicist's look at the way we treat women in power in our days. And the third book in the tops is a debut novel, a sort of literary crime thriller, which really surprised me, and that's mainly because of the premise, which I will talk about in a minute. But the book is called Miracle Creek by Angie Kim, an American writer, and it will come out in April. So it's not available yet, but I got an advance copy from NetGalley. Now, the premise that I talked about is it's basically a courtroom drama because there are 2 people dead and somebody is responsible. We don't know exactly who. But the premise is we have a Korean family, the man Young and his wife, and they run what is called a miracle submarine, which is a pressurized oxygen chamber. So it's a sort of an oxygen treatment, which is regarded not traditional medical treatment, but some people believe that it helps, especially with children who have autism or other forms of autism-like behavior. So I thought that was something I've never read about. So that really surprised me, and it hooked me right away. And then the story develops into a courtroom drama-like story. There is an explosion in that oxygen chamber. I have really difficulty saying that. And 2 people are dead, and then one of the mother of one of the dead children is accused of murder, of setting fire to the chamber. And then we follow the court drama, and we know from the start that maybe she is not the guilty one, and slowly we learn what really happened. There's also a lot of discussion in that book about immigration, about immigrant life, the family at the center, the ones who run that submarine, as they call it, are immigrants from Korea, and the relationship between the husband and the wife is explored in depth. So the characters are really interesting. It's told from various points of views, also from the points of view of the woman accused, and it's an interesting mix of a courtroom drama and a character-driven detective. But like I said, the premise, what happened, how the murder or wrongful death happened, I thought was really new and innovative, and I thought the writing was good. So I will talk about this book probably for my April to be released books again, so that you will not forget it. But it was a surprise, and in a very good way. And then on to the flops. And the first book, it's not really a flop, but it was in the end a disappointment for me for various reasons. And that is this one, Old Baggage by Lisa Evans. This book is a prequel to another book by Lisa Evans called Crooked Heart, but I haven't read that one, so I can't judge anything but this one. The book is set in 1928, between 1928 and 1931. And the main character is Mattie Simpkin, a 58-year-old woman, at least she's 58 in 1928, who has quite an extraordinary past because she was one of the English suffragettes. So the suffragette movement doesn't exist any longer, and she is well-to-do. She has money, she has a house, and she lives together with a friend of hers, Florrie Flea, who is in love with her, but Mattie doesn't know that. And Mattie is looking for something else to do, and she starts a group, an educational group, so to say, for young women, young girls. And then there is a competing girl group from a former friend of Mattie's, Jacqueline, who was also in the suffragette movement, but is now turning her politics to fascist ideology. And we experience the clash of Mattie with Jacqueline, but there are also two of the young girls central to the story, Ines and Ida. I think my disappointment of the book was for two things. First of all, because everybody loved this book. Everybody I knew and I respect their views, like Mel from Mel's Bookland Adventure and Victoria from Eve's Alexandra. They all gave it 5 stars. They loved it. It's a delight. It's wonderful. So I probably entered the book with too much of the thought, well, this is going to be great, this is going to be 5 stars. So I had to come down from that first. Well, I managed to do that after I read the first couple of chapters, and then I started, to have my own views and like it. But then my disappointment came from the ending. In the end, Mattie you have this character arc. She's quite self-involved in the beginning, quite rude to people. She is not an empathetic person. And in the end, she develops empathy and love and the way it is done was for me such a cliche that the way a woman can lead a good life, a morally good life, always has to do something with caring for others and being a mother. And I just hate that. That's a very subjective point of view, obviously, but it made me at the end that I looked at the book and I thought, meh. But still, like I said, a lot of people loved it. So if you have a different idea of how a book should end, you might love it as well, and it's certainly, from the writing and everything, it's certainly worth a try. And then finally, the book I read in January that irked me the most, and that was without a doubt An Unremarkable Body by Elisa Lodato, first published last year. and I read it because it was shortlisted for the Costa First Novel Award. The premise of the novel also sounded interesting. We have our main character, Laura, who is a 30-ish something woman and who finds her mother, Catherine, dead on the foot of the stairs when she visits her mother. Her mother is only 51, and then you have this the setup of the book structure is the pathology report that Laura reads, and then she tries to explore not so much what has happened to her mother, because it's ruled an accident, at least at first, but to explore her mother's life. Her mother is separated from Laura's father, Richard, who has a new wife, with new kids, or at least one new kid, and there's her mother's best friend, Helen, and then you have Laura's the two men in her life, her ex-boyfriend, David, and her new love interest, Tom. The writing was good, the idea was good, but like I said on Goodreads, I'm so fed up of reading books set in the present where the relationships between men and women are just like we are back in the 50s. If the man is sort of the savior, and the woman, if once she's pregnant, of course she doesn't work. It's not even a question whether she works or not. It's just like it's a given. Of course you don't work when you have children. There are some interesting things in the book, for sure. The relationship between Catherine, the mother, and her best friend Helen. But the ending was really moralistic, I thought. And yeah, like I said, I just got completely irked by this way of portraying relationships in the 21st century. So that's why this was the book that irked me the most. Okay, this was it for my January tops and flops. Thank you very much for watching. Looking forward to talking to you down in the comments, and especially I'm interested to hear whether you think this would make sense as a monthly feature, or whether you think that's too much. I'm interested to know, and I'll see you all in my next one. Bye bye.